close to Romance in Western Grove. But anyway, Gavin grew up in Hamlet Heights, Geelong, was the eldest of 9, attended St Joseph's College, and in 78 started a military career at Royal Military College, Duntroon, Canberra. Over many years, Gavin's established himself as a leader of both regular army and as Sergeant of Arms for the Victorian Parliament. So trust me, it'll be an interesting talk tonight. I spoke to him for 2 hours in the coffee shop.
And he was late.
I was late, absolutely late. He also worked in Afghanistan with NATO. Returned from Afghanistan, he continued to work for the Defence of Indigenous Affairs, and in 2015 began working for AMDA to manage protocol for the Australian Air Show. So AMDA is Aerospace, Maritime, Defence and Security for Australia. In 2021, Gavin retired, now plays in his workshop, working on wooden toys and projects for his grandson. Lives with his wife Lynn in Ocean Grove, has 2 dogs, drives the passion of his life, an MGB, and enjoys life as it's meant to be. So thanks, Gavin.
No worries.
Like to come
Do you mind if I forego the mic? I'm sure everyone will hear me.
Sure. Yeah.
If you can't hear me, please let me know, and I will use the mic. I'm just really useless at them. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because I'm going to lose my hands a lot, you know. Okay. I did think when I was first contacted I should stand up here and talk something about leadership and where the army goes and the way we do things and, you know, teach you all something about what I've done. The reality is, I look at you guys here, I go, you guys have all done it too, so there's no point me bullshitting a bullshitter, excuse my French. So, and you'll also on that point note, I've been 43 years an infantryman. The occasional word comes out of my mouth that isn't quite politically correct, so please excuse that. It's just something that's ingrained in my psyche and in my personal being. Sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Coral.
As Coral can attest with her son, who is also an artilleryman in the Defence Force, or was, and once it's in your blood, you can't get it out of you, which, to the chagrin of Lynn, is often a bit of a downside, but more times than not, it's pretty good. So what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd just give you a couple of stories over my life, and to quote A.B. Face, I've had a very fortunate life in what I've done. I started off in Geelong at Hamlin Heights and went to school there, eldest of 9 kids. My brothers played football. Instead of me playing football, I went to the army, went to Duntroon. I'm the first one in my family to go and do it. I had a ball. I had a hoot of a time. And I think it was all about because I was with a really good bunch of guys. And that's where my learning to become a leader, because I ended up going to infantry and I was in the operational side of the workshop, if you like. So when you think of operations, you think about the movies you see on soldiers that go and do the fighting. That was my job. That's what I did. I was a commander of those. So I was the Tom Hanks, but not quite in that scenario, of leading guys into battle and all that. So that's what we trained for. And to quote the journalist of the Canberra Times and the Duntroon on the post of December 13 of 1982, 82 graduates from Duntroon graduated on Tuesday. They were taught to drive Ferraris, but were given Holdens instead. And we stepped into the longest period of peace ever Australia had, 25 years. We'd never been in peace for that long, and we haven't since. So we were trained to drive Ferraris, but we ended up driving Holdens and nothing happened. Nothing at all. It was really boring. But having said that, we learnt heaps. One of the first things I learnt was a thing called Easter Bunny. Now you guys have all heard of bastardisation and giving people a hard time. Well, Easter Bunny was perhaps falling into that category. I remember waking up one night, the Thursday before Easter started on Good Friday, and suddenly I was drenched in water. 2 a.m. in the morning, March, I was saturated in water. I go, what the hell? I get out into the corridors, there's all my mates. What the hell? Suddenly the guys that are above us go, it was the guys from the dogs. Kokodas have done it. They've done a job on you. God, we'll get them. So we all rush out. We grab our rubbish bins, fill them with water, racing down the hill. And as we're racing down the hill, there's a bunch of guys coming up the hill. What are you guys doing? We're going to get you. What do you mean? It wasn't us. Wasn't this? And we look around, and there at the block where we live is our bedding, our clothing, our uniforms, all coming out the window with fire hoses following. And we've gone, no! We race back up to the block to find the doors locked, and our stuff is still coming out the windows. That was Easter Bunny visiting us. Sounds really rugged and hard, and like we were really happy to have it happen to us. But the thing was, what occurred was we'd spent 2 months beating the square and doing a whole lot of stuff, learning how to be military. We were just normal kids that went into the army and had to get us into a certain psyche and a certain way to do business. So for 2 months we were surviving, if you like, on the green machine. And then Easter Bunny comes along because then all the senior cadets went on leave. And we didn't go on leave. We went on a rec camp where we learned how to do survival training, we learned how to parachute, we learned boating, we learned canoeing, scuba diving, all that sort of stuff. But what we hadn't done at that point was we hadn't actually bonded as a group together. Now, ironically, the one thing that didn't get wet that night were our sleeping bags. Funny that, because everything else was wet and everything was thrown out the window. But our sleeping bags were okay. So we ended up in a room about the size of this called a rec room, and that's where 25 guys, all 18 to 22, or all 18 to 19 actually, we slept there together with wet clothing, we had in dry sleeping bags, and got to know each other, because the next day we went out on Easter rec camp and got to know each other better. Now those friendships that I developed then and developed the months beforehand, they still live with me today. I can remember working at Parliament as a sergeant. I'm walking down the street, down Bourke Street, and I saw this body at the top of the street there about 200 metres away from me. I just looked at it from behind, walking away from me. And I called out, "Hey, Rote!" And this guy turns around and goes, "Gav, how are you?" I picked up a guy that I had lived with and trained with 30 years prior, just from the way he was walking down the street in amongst a whole group of people in Melbourne before COVID, so there were people in the streets. And those friendships developed over time. But Easter Bunny also taught me something else for leadership, and that was make sure you think before you act. Because what we didn't do was we just immediately reacted rather than thinking. And if we had a thought about it, we'd have gone, this is a bit odd. Those guys are all dry, we're wet. That's a bit weird, because surely they would have attacked everyone. And we didn't think, we rushed out. So whilst a lot of people claim bastardisation and everything else, we actually learned some really valuable lessons there. And it took us a long way in the way we approached, the way we led soldiers later on. Which brings me to a couple of years later. We all think we're invincible, and we all think we're really important. So up at Puckapunyal, everybody knows Puckapunyal, lovely area, really cold, really hot. Take your pick, doesn't matter. We're in the middle of a range, getting ready to go out on an exercise called Armoured Week. And the tanks and the APCs, armoured personnel carriers, those square box-like things that got tracks, okay, they were mucking around together and driving around, and we were in a bus waiting to start this exercise. It was really cold, it was really horrible, and it was very dusty, which is what Pucka is like. And we weren't really happy about doing the exercise because it was just going to be miserable anyhow. So, we'd rather go home. And as we're sitting there, one of the guy's brothers, his brother, was the OC, officer commanding the squadron of APCs, armoured personnel carriers, M113s. And they were used in Vietnam, the same things. Funny that. And it pulls up in this lager, which is just where all the APCs pulled up. Big dust cloud, right? And we're sitting in the bus about 20 metres away. Next thing you know, a Panzer comes through, driving flat out, and it comes through the dust cloud with its barrel poked out, and suddenly the dust clears a little bit, and there's the APC right in front of it. So it hits the skids. When a tank hits the skids, it can stop in its own body length. Unfortunately, the barrel of the tank hit the back of the cupola, which went in like that, took the cupola's lid, which is a guy's stand in, there's a hole about this big, you stand in it to command, and the lid went boom, like that, and went shut. Unfortunately, my mate's brother was in the middle of that hole. And we're sitting in the bus watching going, and we went, holy shit, that's really bad, because he just went like a rag doll into the turret. And we've gone, oh, it's really bad, but the exercise is off. Excellent. We don't have to go bush. This is great. Oh, bugger, he's really sore. Oh, it's off. Excellent. Next thing you know, blood box rocks up, white circle, red cross, pull him out, throw him in the back, off it goes. And we go, yes, end of exercise, we're not going, woohoo. Guy pops up in the cupola. What's he doing? Get out, no, the guy's hurt. Got to stop now, can't do anything. Right, advance. And we go, oh, you're shitting me. No. And we suddenly learned then, albeit to the cost of the OC, we're replaceable. And we learnt that lesson firsthand looking at this occur. So this guy went down, he lost a spleen, part of his liver, one of his kidneys, but he was okay at the end. He ended up coming back and being able to command a couple of months later, about a year and a half actually. But he was okay. But immediately his 2 IC, second in command, stood up and went, circle up, advance. And we just gone, you got to be kidding me. Because we all had this self-importance, we're going to be young lieutenants, we're going to be really good, and no one can replace us. Guess again, they can. And that's where we learnt our job also was not only that we could be replaced, but we had to train the guys behind us to replace us. And that was the name of the game. And I learnt that again when I was over in England and we were doing an attack on the Soviet trench system, which is the way the British did things, which is really quite fortuitous. And we're attacking a trench system. Up comes this commanding officer, because I was a major, and this guy comes up, a lieutenant colonel, and says, Sergeant Major, he grabs my sergeant major beside me. Sergeant Major, I want you to attack that way. And my CSM looks at me and goes, sir, he's asking us to attack. No, mate, he's telling you, go and attack that way. Be flexible, go and attack that way. So he had to suddenly pick up his bongos and do something else totally different to what I was doing. The only problem was, he was working on my plan. But because I'd been at Puckapungle in 1982, and I'd seen what had happened, I had actually trained my CSM to take over my job if I went down. So I was quite confident that Tony Moore, could go and do the job that I needed him to do. In fact, what the CO needed him to do. So I just said, mate, go and do it. And he went and led another attack with a whole bunch of dudes that way. And it's really interesting because the trench systems being used now, the same trench systems being used in another place in the world where everyone's blaming everything from COVID to the Earth rotating on the wrong axis for whatever reasons. But they're still in existence. And one thing that history teaches us is that people don't read history. They really don't. The same things are happening exactly the same way as it happened hundreds of years and a lot to go. So we learn all these things as we're going through life. And I find it really interesting that, everybody sort of stands up and says to you, so, what's the difference in your leadership and why do you do things? I'm going, well, the big thing I've learned is be flexible. I've learned everything I need to do about leadership. But what you need to do is to be flexible. And that's the key to it. I remember standing on the steps of Parliament as Sergeant-at-Arms. Now, the Sergeant-at-Arms is with the Usher of the Black Rod, or the Udder, as I used to enjoy calling him, because he was a pom, and it really used to grate him. But the sergeant had responsibility for security. So the moment, you may not know this, but when you're standing on Spring Street, the moment you step one step onto those steps, you're on the parliamentary precinct and you're mine. Your body belongs to me. And I've got all these police to help me take you. But we're a bit lenient. We give you the first 3 steps and then there's a causeway, which is where the cars drive up. So we're nice. So we had a big ceremony going on in 2001 because it was 100 years since Federation. And you may or may not realise, but the federal parliament didn't sit in Canberra back then. It sat in Melbourne at Victorian Parliament. And in fact, Australia went to war twice from their war rooms at Parliament in Victoria. And the war rooms still exist at Victoria Barracks, by the way, too. The same ones you look at when you go to London and go, oh, these are cool war rooms. Those same rooms exist here in Australia. So we're there standing up there, and my job was to make sure that the right people came in. And they were all heavy hitters, VIPs, because the MPs from Canberra were coming down, the Prime Minister was coming down, and I'm standing up trying to look really good in my penguin suit and doing the right thing. And I'm standing up, comes this couple. They dilly-bop up the stairs, and I'm going, and I had an assistant with me. I'll look after this one. I step forward and, sorry, sir, can you just hang on a second? And he looks at me and I'm going, you realise that this is the parliamentary sitting today? He said, yes, of course I do. I said, can I help you? Well, I am the Deputy Prime Minister. I said, of course you are. Come on in. Got out of that one okay, I reckon. That was lucky. And, but what I also learned at Parliament was that people are really weird. I mean, and they're allowed to vote. That's what's really scary. So I used to really enjoy going to watch and meet guests as they came through Parliament. Because I've got to tell you, being sergeant was just a hoot of a job, because you worked for the Speaker, you were a clerk of the House, so you got into the chamber and did everything with the members, but really you ran your own game because you had to look after security, and you had to make sure everything was right. So I'd go and meet groups that came in, and they'll sit in the chamber and they, well, this is the chamber, take photographs. And I'd say, and I'd tell them all about the mace, and I'd tell them about the table. Who knows the reason why the table is as wide as it is in the Parliament? It's about that wide. Do you know why it's that wide? Anyone got an idea?
So they can't reach.
Pretty close. Can't reach with what? The sword. It's exactly 2 sword lengths apart. Didn't matter in the States because one guy pulled out a pistol and shot the other guy. But that's America for you. But that's what it's for, you see. It's two sword lengths apart, so you can't actually stab the other dude when you're having a fight, an argument. But I digress. And the mace, of course, I tell them about the mace. So the mace, this is an interesting one for you. The mace is in fact the big thing that sits at the end of the table. It is the symbol of the authority of the Parliament and the Speaker. The crown is not the mace. The mace is a bit, chop off the crown, it's a bit at the end with a lump of metal at the end. And why was the mace chosen as a weapon of choice? That's an interesting story as well. And I'd tell this to the guests coming in and say, well, back in the old good days, Richard the First, who was it the first? I've forgotten who it was. The King. The King decided he wanted to find out what Parliament was doing. So he in fact got the Speaker and said, hey mate, come here. If you want this to happen, you tell me what everyone's voting so I can make sure that those that are voting against me don't actually get to vote. So a couple of members went missing, turned up elsewhere when they couldn't be found. And then the rest of the members cottoned on that something was amiss here. So they gave the Speaker a sergeant. Sergeant in the old terminology means a servant. At arms meant he had a weapon. Sergeant had horses. Sergeant had veggies, I suppose, but that's the way it worked. So the weapon of the day was the mace, because chain mail had just been invented. And chain mail is that stuff you see all the knights wearing underneath their armour, because chain mail prevents a stab going into your body. But chain mail does not prevent a lump of metal on the end of a stick stopping your chest from being caved in. So the mace was the weapon of the day, and was seen by all good knights and good servicemen that were out there to kill people. And that's what was given to the sergeant. So I tell this to the people, and then I say, any questions? And I'll be sitting down there going, oh, yeah, what can I help you with? Yeah. Where does the Prime Minister sit? Okay, this is the state parliament. The federal parliament sits in Canberra, and that's where they are. So this is where the state sits, Brumby, Mr. Brumby and Mr. Plates and all that. Oh, right, yeah, no worry, okay. Any other questions? Have you? Yeah, but which chair is you sit in? That one there. Oh, right, click, 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 click. Okay, and you're allowed to vote. Oh, honestly. And that's just a touch of the iceberg, a tip of the iceberg. It's some people just, they should not be allowed to vote, but they do, and good on them. And it's always entertaining to meet people that feel that they've got a right to say things that are really bizarre. But another story. A part of the leadership in the military, and it's very different to leadership everywhere else, is that the adaptability and flexibility of being on the spot does catch you at times, and you may not realise it. But the training you're given takes you through and carries you through the day. I was in a place called Nowzad in 2010 in Afghanistan. I was there with ISAF, International Security Assistance Force Afghanistan. It was not a UN assistance, it was a NATO assistance, okay? So the Yanks played a big part. I love the Germans for this, because the Germans held the Yanks to account for everything. They were brilliant, but that's not in NATO scripture. Oh, well, the Germans are fantastic people. But the Yanks bring a lot to the party. So we're at Nowzad, and we're wandering around the market. Now what's interesting here is just prior to us going there's a really big operation called Marja, Op Mushtarak, which is great if you're Sean Connery. Op Mushtarak. It sounds really good, really sexy, Yeah, Op Mushtarak. And so that had just gone down. That was a pretty big operation which involved a whole lot of Marines and everything else. And it was down in our sector, down in the south, which is where we were, a little bit away from Tarankot, but it involved a whole lot of people. And Nowzad was a little town that the Taliban had gone into, kicked everyone out, and then before they left, mined everything. So when people came home to their homes, they'd step inside the house and there was a mine. Because Afghanistan's didn't have like the family dog, they had the family mine. So a family would have its own weapon system, if you like, usually a mine that they put in their house to protect their house while they were away. Except the Taliban took all those and they used them against them. So people were coming back to homes, stepping into the house and getting blown up because of the Taliban. And we were there because we cleared a whole lot of it and we were there to show our support for the locals and be friendly. And there was a market on, a farmer's market. Not dissimilar to the ones up here at Ocean Grove every couple of weeks. Except I didn't realise it at the time until later on when I was shown a photograph. And I had a pretty good time because I was trying to engage with people, talk to them, talk to the kids, talk to the blokes that were there. We weren't allowed to talk to the women. The kids were incredible. The kids were a mishmash of every nationality you could think of. You could have 5 kids in front of you and you could see Eurasian, Caucasian, Asian, European, all in the one lot of kids. Because that's when you realise that that's on the Silk Route. And that's where humanity just merged. And it's still there. You know, I mean, humanity just crunched through there and the remnants are still there. But I digress. So I'm talking to these guys and I'm trying to put across a good impression. I'm kitted and spurred. I've got a gun. I've got everything, body armour, helmet, the whole lot. Took my helmet off, put on the bush hat, be nice and friendly. And so I was being very positive. And I thought I'd done a decent job. Got out of there alive, which I thought was pretty cool. And it wasn't until the next day when I realised that my training had actually given me a leg up, because I saw a photograph that a guy had taken of me talking to a farmer. I'm talking like this, being animated, saying hello. But the look on this farmer's face to me was just hatred. He didn't want me to be there. He didn't like me. He didn't want me to do anything with him at all. I didn't see that because I'm focusing on a whole lot of things going on, because you're very aware of your surroundings. But I didn't focus on it, which was probably a good thing, because had I focused on it, I probably would have had to step back and try and diffuse the situation, go and do something else, because he was not happy I was there. But it only came out in the photograph later on. And I go back and I think, all those times that I went through training and I did different things and you get caught out and you get surprised, the thing that saved my bacon was the flexibility to be able to adapt to a changing circumstance. The changing circumstance was that this guy didn't want me there, would have done something if I'd done something wrong, but I was able to pick up because I just had a sixth sense, my spider senses were tingling, and I just knew that I had to be really careful. Don't put my hand on my weapon. Stand back, be friendly. Don't come too close. Because there was only me and a couple of dudes around and a general was sitting over there. That was it. There was no one else around. So it could have been a bit of a shit fight, but it wasn't, which is really quite good. And it's interesting because I look at leadership and I've studied it a lot over the years, and flexibility isn't in one of the words that's ever used. Yet I think flexibility is one of the key components of leadership, regardless of what job you're doing, because it means you have the ability to understand and adapt to the situation. You don't have to be hard-nosed. You don't have to be hot-headed. You can stop, you can think a little bit and just adapt to the situation. Be flexible. One of the beautiful things about Australian soldiers overseas is we are ultimately flexible. We bend over backwards because we don't give a rat's. We rock up and we tell people what they think. And I was fronting a colonel who was giving me a plan, and she's doing this plan, and I just went, and I had an Estonian lieutenant colonel working for me. I was lieutenant colonel, I was the boss. An Estonian lieutenant colonel, a Marine lieutenant colonel working for me, and an Army major, American major. We're all there. And this colonel, who's a full colonel, one rank above, and the brigadier, and they're going, plan. I'm going, oh, that's fucked. Excuse my French. And the Estonian, as quick as a flash, stepped in and said, ma'am, that's Australian for it won't work. And I've gone, V, thanks mate, because his name was Vico Velopellam. I just called him V for short, but he got it. It took me a little while, but it's like, they don't get us. But it's interesting, they don't get us, but they really like us. I mean, they understand what we bring to the party. And many of you here, and I'm surprised there's one, but not many of you here will know many people in the military, because less than 0.04% of the population of 25 million are in the military. Chances are you don't really know someone personally, what they've gone through, because often not, they won't tell you about it because we are very laid back and we don't really talk about it very much. We just do our job. But overseas, we're looked upon pretty well. And when we say things, they really tend to listen to us and understand what we're saying. And the beautiful thing about most Australians overseas is we tell it as it is. There's no gilding the lily, no making it sound really good. We tell them, yeah, it's not going to work, it's going to work. We agree or we don't agree. And they tend to listen and go, right, okay, got that, understand. Which is a bonus for us, but that's just the way we do things and we do business. And I hope it continues to be that way, you know. That's my sincere hope. I don't know whether it will or not because I've been out of the system for a couple of years. But I have enjoyed. How's my time going? You want me to wrap up?
Yeah.
All right. Last story then, last story. Wanted to show you how flexibility can occur for your subordinates. So we're Commonwealth Games. I'm the commanding officer of the security task group, and I've got a whole lot of guys and girls out there looking after you guys as you come and watch the Commonwealth Games 2006. We sweep the Melbourne cricket ground, we swept various areas for explosive, we had all the security points and everything else. So one of my young lasses, Lieutenant, was standing guard with her detachment at one of the VIP entrances, standing there. She was doing everything right, and she was doing it pretty well. A little bit nervous because she's only a young lieutenant. And she's there, down comes this car screaming down. Halt! Car stops. Out gets the car. Oh, yeah. Okay, advance. Oh, ma'am, the Queen. You can enter, ma'am. And so she let her go. Flexibility is the key, and I think we've got a great bunch of guys and girls out there. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't bore you too much.
I'm supposed to respond to this, and I could just do that. So, has anybody got any questions?
Oh, sorry. Feel free. If you want a question, feel free.
Yeah.
Chatham House rules, I can say what I like. Remember, it's my experience.
I've got a question on behalf of Rod Birrell.
That's right, Bill.
Yeah, what year's your MGB?
I was going to ask the same question.
August 72, 7th month of 72. Red, of course, goes faster. Who asked that? Red. Say again?
Registration green.
Say again?
Sorry?
What'd you say?
It's a Mark II.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah, bloody oath.
Any good?
Bloody oath
No?
it is.
Oh,
Hi.
How did she know it was the Queen? Did the Queen have ID or was it just the visual?
Visual, like, hey, ma'am, how you going?
I know you have to have ID for if you're the Queen.
She's pretty cool. I mean, a mate of mine was doing guard duty at Buckingham Palace and he's stuffed up. But, yeah, okay. He's the only guy that he knows and I know that actually got 7 days extras from the Queen, because she was out when she goes, gave him 7 days extra means you're on duty for 7 days straight. So he marches off. She watches the change in the guard, yeah. So he got
What
bounced.
did you do wrong?
He sort of mucked up one of the commands. Yeah, not cool.
Are we ever going to get national service back?
God, I hope not. No, no. Now the problem with, from my perspective, the problem with national service is that you realise we've never sent soldiers overseas that haven't volunteered to go overseas. Now there's a lot of debate with the Vietnam guys, but the reality is that the Vietnam guys had a choice to go overseas or not. The problem is that you got to understand, when you're in a unit of 560 guys and you're all geared up and you've been hitting the terps with each other, you've been out having a great time in Sydney at the Cross or whatever, you've been living life to the fullest with these guys, your mates, and they're all going, you don't tend to go, no, I'm staying home. You tend to go, oh, fuck it, I'm going with you. You know? And this is a problem that a lot of people have not acknowledged, in that you stick with your mates through thick and thin. And I found the same issue with Indigenous soldiers overseas when people go, I'm bringing my father back home, my uncle back home because he was buried in Egypt or something. I said, well, think about this, you know. He didn't have to go. None of us did. He went with his mates. Unfortunately, got killed with his mates. He's buried with his mates. I'm going to tell you, the mateship bond is a lot stronger than the bond that you went to school with your mate. It's a lot stronger. He's buried with his mates and he's resting with his mates. Do you really want to separate him from his mates? because I can tell you now, I wouldn't want to be, and I don't think they would. And I get the land and I get all that, but a lot of people don't understand the military ethos and what people think and believe. That's just my take on it. So, you know, we're right. Hi.
Okay, we're being invaded. Have we got enough soldiers to defend it?
Define being invaded.
By whom?
Okay, don't worry about the Chinese. China's a dinks, and then it's not a worry. Okay, China doesn't have it. Hey?
What do you say about China?
China's got a very big military population, army, but it can't move it. Okay, can't move it. Okay, who's got Netflix? Rightio. Watch Netflix. Watch Sea Power. When you watch Sea Power, you understand that the role of the navies from before the war through to now. It's a very good doco, 4 parts, really easy one to watch. And it takes you through, and you'll recognise at the very end that, so China has just what do you call it when you smash the bottle and launched and champagned its way to a new aircraft carrier. Woohoo!
That's right.
Oh yes, really big. Whoa, they've now got 2. Woo! America's got 10.
We haven't got any.
No, we haven't, but America's got 10 on current use with another couple in storage. America's aircraft carriers use modern technology, which is nuclear, and you've seen Top Gun, the way the jets go off? The Chinese aircraft carriers use the propulsion of the planes. That's why we've got the jump ramp, okay? The technology advancements between America and China are so far out of this world when it comes to maritime and air, it's not funny. The ability for China to move a million, so they've got 1 million troops, I think they've got 2.5 million troops in uniform. They can't move them anywhere. The problem they face is Taiwan, and that's the problem we all face. The problem with Taiwan is Taiwan's got a pretty big army as well. China said it wants Taiwan back. Okay, this is me thinking, all right, said it wants Taiwan back. So Taiwan's gone, ain't going to happen. Taiwan already do funny buggers on their into China already. They all know the lay of China's land like the back of their hand. All right? But when you give, and Taiwan has not declared whether it's a nuclear power or not. Does anyone know? Because they haven't told anyone. So when you give someone no option out, except that we're going to take you by force, what does that person do when you've got no option out? It fights tooth and nail. So if China goes for Taiwan, Taiwan will go for the throat with China, and it will be a really vicious, bloody battle. And China won't do that because the bulk of the people, China has a population of 2.4 billion people. Billion people, not million, billion. It's controlled by 100 million members of the party. What is 100 million in 2.4 billion people? Anyone got an idea? Say again?
0.5%.
0.5%.
Less than.
0.5%. So if I give you 1 million seconds to live, how long are you going to live for? Anyone?
Day.
11 days. If I give you 1 billion seconds, how long are you going to live for?
24 beers.
Close? Not quite. You'll live for 31 years. Roughly. Okay? So you've got 11 days looking after 31 years, 63, 70 odd years of people looking at that way. So the problem that is, anyone been to China?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you notice in China? How many of the people over there are really enthralled about the police, the army and everything else being controlled?
Scared to talk.
They don't care.
No, scared though.
Yeah,
They
they are.
just want to live.
Correct. They want to live. They don't want to be going under. And the moment you start to see Chinese soldiers being killed in China or going on something that's not needed, I think you'll see a great problem for China.
They love their family.
Yeah, that's right.
They love their what?
Their family. So I'm not really worried about China, to tell you the truth.
When I
I'm
was
more
there,
concerned
they
about
just
others.
wanted the next meal.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks very much.
Sorry, yeah.
What do you think about the Solomon Islands and what they're going to do there?
Oh, with the belts and roads and that.
Whatever.
I think there's lots of MPs over there that have got really healthy bank balances, and I think that the people aren't really getting their say. But the problem with the Solomon Islands and those places, they're very small countries, and whilst they're very important to everything else, they will be absorbed into the machinations of a east-west versus conflict. I mean, that'll just happen if it happens. They can do what they like, really, but nothing will change.
All right, well, thanks very much.
Sorry.
Gavin. What a
Talking too
well-
much. I told you to stop me.
One of the things you've done has made me speechless, so thank you.